Good evening, I'm Emma Jane Vere and this is Television Tonga News. In the headlines, Tonga spends more than 90 million ba'anga in 2012 to import food and beverages. Concerns over the safety of residents living close to the Hu'atolitoli prisons at Waini. And Tonga Side School holds a fundraise drive to replace its asbestos roofs, which poses health risks to its students. Now for a look at the local news in detail. Tonga spent up to 94 million ba'anga in 2012 to import food and beverages. The statement was made by His Serene Highness Prince Tuipelehake based on figures from the Statistics Department. He revealed this yesterday at a program attended by representatives from Tonga's food industries. Linda Filiai has more on that story.
Speaking to Television Tonga News, His Serene Highness Prince Tuipelehake says a lot of money has been used to purchase food items from overseas, but most of it can be produced locally. The food industry is one of the biggest industries in Tonga. A total of 94 million has been spent on importing food to the kingdom. I believe majority of this food item imported can be produced locally. It's crucial to ensure there is a sustainable food supply in the kingdom, His Serene Highness adds, so there is no hunger in Tonga, which will in turn lead to a peaceful nation. There is a group called Kitchen Club, and I hope we can set up a garden club that focuses on planting vegetable and crops for the community. I propose to look at the abandoned lots in the communities where the families live overseas and get permission from the town officer or the proper authorities to allow the people in the community to plant vegetable and crops there for the local consumption. The issue of abandoned lots or land was raised in Parliament in previous discussion. In light of this, initiatives are made to produce local food products which are healthy and cheap for the people. The program was attended by stakeholders in food industries such as representatives from Statistics Department, Ministry of Health, Tonga Health and local restaurants. This is an initiative of His Serene Highness Prince Tuipelehake and supported by the Ministry of Agriculture's Food Division. The Food Division also gives support to locally produced food items, which will help minimize the reliance on imported food items. For Television Tonga News, I'm Linda Filiai.
From Parliament today, the estate holder of Waini Village, Lord Ma'afu, has raised a concern over the location of the Hu'atolitoli prisons and its proximity to residents in the village and their safety. Here's Kalaini Tongilava with more on that story.
The Minister in Charge and Minister of Land, Survey, Environment and Natural Resources raised this in the parliamentary discussions during deliberations on an annual report from the Ministry of Prisons 2013. Lord Ma'afu told the House he believes that the Hu'atolitoli prison facility is not secure. The issue was supported by Tonga Tapu's No. 8 People's Representative, Sione Taione. Mr. Taione told the House that the residents of Waini and Malapo have raised similar concerns regarding the location of the Hu'atolitoli prisons. He also proposed for government to relocate the prison facility to another area. Furthermore, Mr. Taione told Parliament that special attention should be made to young or new prisoners at prison. When Parliament adjourned for lunch, discussions were still underway on the prison's report. Parliamentarians continued their discussions on the same report when the House reconvened at 2 this afternoon. It was broadcast live on Radio Tonga 1 and 2, thanks to the generosity of the British High Commission to Tonga, in collaboration with Tonga Broadcasting Commission.
Police have reported the first suicide case in Ha'apai. According to Ha'apai's Chief Inspector of Police, Agustino Peleki, a post-mortem of a 19-year-old man showed his death was caused by the consumption of a toxic chemical. It's believed the decision was made due to a disagreement with a female friend. However, police are still investigating into the matter. The last suicide reported from Ha'apai was 5 years ago. A Tongan scientist has discovered a particular genus from a marine animal known as Holothuria as a cure for certain types of cancer. We're joined for Taiwhanga'a with the details.
The research was carried out by a Tongan woman, Dr. Diane Sika from Massey University in New Zealand. Her research identifies that Holothuria are soft-bodied, limbless invertebrates that dwell on the ocean floor. They are similar to sea cucumbers. This new finding was revealed to Radio and Television Tonga News by a Tongan doctor who works in New Zealand, Ate Foliaki Moala. Dr. Sika's research finds that holophiria can replace the use of chemotherapy to treat cancer patients. The side effects of chemotherapy is pain, fatigue, and hair loss, yet none of these are evident when using holophiria as a treatment for certain types of cancer. Dr. Ate adds that Dr. Diane Sika is completing her PhD studies as a scientist. The results of her findings has been handed over to expertise to be tested, and if successful, then it will be made official to be a cancer treatment. This can also be known as one of the latest scientific breakthroughs. Dr. Sika was in Tonga for the first time to attend the Pacifica Medical Association and Tonga Medical Association conference last month. For Television Tonga News, I'm Fatai Whaingaa.
Coral reefs in Tonga are reported to be quite well with minimal impact of climate change. That's compared with the declining state of coral reefs globally. The chief scientist of the Living Oceans Foundation, Andrew Bruckner, made the statement while presenting their findings on coral reefs in Tonga. Sinilatu tells you more.
Mr. Bruckner presented their findings at a reception on board the Golden Shadow research vessel at Vuna Wharf. It was attended by the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, Lord Whawhanua, heads of diplomatic missions and other guests. The Foundation's findings were based on a research they carried out on reefs in Ha'apai, Vava'o, Niwa Fo'o and Niwa Toptapu.
I think the corals in general are doing quite well. We saw a few problems with certain coral predators, but what we've seen in all the places that we looked at where there was some damage, there was active recovery going on. And so I think the corals themselves are doing quite well. Right now, reefs are faring fairly well. There are some problems that we did identify, but I think they can all be addressed fairly simply with just more sustainable use of the resources and being more careful about what you do on land.
Speaking with Television Tonga News, Mr. Bruckner says more than 200 coral reef species can be found in Tonga. He adds, very few species are damaged due to the impact of climate change and cyclones, among other stresses, yet they recover well.
I think here there's at least 290 reported, so we're seeing species that we haven't seen in the past, and I think that was really unique. We also saw some very large assemblages of certain corals, bigger corals than we've seen, which means they're much older because a coral continues to grow forever. And so we saw one of the corals that builds the reefs. We saw the largest ones of those that we've ever seen anywhere that we've dove so far. We saw, corals that we'd estimate were 500 to 1,000 years old that were completely live. But we did see some alarming trends of overfishing on a number of the reefs. We saw very few large predatory fish, things like sharks and groupers and snapper were quite rare. We didn't see as many large schools of fish that live in schools, things like the parrotfish and surgeonfish. A lot of the things that are regularly eaten, they seem to be quite rare on a lot of the reefs.
Mr. Bruckner urges the government and the people to avoid dumping sewage into the sea, as it's one of the factors that affects the growth and health of coral reefs. He recommends establishing more protected areas to help replenish the population of marine organisms, especially fish and other food resources for future generations. The CEO of the Ministry of Lands, Survey, Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources, Asipeli Palaki, says the survey is important for Tonga in efforts to manage marine resources well. The US-based Living Oceans Foundation is funded by the Prince of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Royal Highness Prince Khaled bin Sultan. For Television Tonga News, I'm Sinilatu.
Tonga will benefit from a new Pacific Climate Change Centre that will be established soon. The centre will be based at the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Programme, or SPREP office, in Apia, Samoa. Sinilatu again has the details.
In an interview with the CEO of the Ministry of Lands, Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources, Asipeli Palaki, the new Pacific Climate Change Centre will collect and store climate change information from countries in the Pacific region. The main purpose to enable Pacific Islands to share climate change information. The Pacific countries can also access all the information. In addition, islands like Tonga that want to improve project-based fundings can get help when these islands mobilize those funds. The CEO says there are about 6 projects implemented in Tonga that are funded under SPREP. There is a project for the water supply of Hihifo and its coastal areas. It's funded by AusAid through SPREP. There are other projects on climate change, waste and pollution. They also provide technical assistance and consultant work. Mr. Balaki highlighted that SPREP is the focal point for climate change in the region. For Television Tonga News, I'm Sini Latu.
The Tonga Side School Nuku'alofa campus held a fundraise drive today to replace some of the roofs of the school buildings, which are made of asbestos. Asbestos is commercially used for its desirable physical properties, yet prolonged inhalation can cause illnesses such as cancer. Anasiu Falekaono was at the fundraise event and filed this report.
Students and teachers held a market day and fun fair program at Tonga Side School Nuku'alofa campus grounds. This is to help upgrade many of the classrooms. The president of the school's PTA, Madaki Maasi, told Television Tonga News they have appealed to government for assistance in upgrading the classrooms based on health risks it poses to the students. We did ask government to end school before the end of the academic year because the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Works does not want students to be at the school compound when they carry out renovations to the buildings. We are hoping when school starts next year, this work will be completed. The school principal Adveniana Bomana says parents have also raised similar concerns over the health risks of their children because of the old buildings.
Some of the buildings, school buildings here that had been used for quite a while, and because the parents were very much aware and very concerned about the risks to the health of the students having exposed to these asbestos roofing, that they decided to have a fundraising just to assist the government and the Ministry of Education complete and fulfill this wish for their children. So
students contributed food, handicrafts and other items to be sold at the fundraise event. The head girl prefect of Tonga Side School, Anna Havea, says the students were excited to support worthy fundraise drive.
I think this idea of making a market there was really brilliant. Kids had they had to challenge each other to make things better than the other people in order to be sold out. And how long we've been preparing it? We started preparing for this market day since third term, and everybody was really looking forward for it since they're gonna sell out stuff and get money in those. And my opinion, it's really good. I think like every school should do this because it's encouraging for the kids.
The target of the fundraise event is 50,000 pa'anga. It is the first time for the school to hold such program. At the back of me is one of the classrooms that the main aim of this program is to be removed or renovated for the health of the students. From Tonga Side School, I'm Anasiu Falekaono for Television Tonga News.
DeBow College has welcomed a visit from the Newington College in Australia. The visiting rugby tour and service learning group is made up of staff and 30 students from Newington College. One of the founders of Delore College, the late Reverend Dr. James Egan Moulton, was a former principal at Newington College. We'll join Whanonga Veikoso with more on that story.
A farewell program was hosted by DeBow College for the visiting group from the Newington College. The DeBow College principal, Reverend Dr. Fisi Hoimone, says they benefit from this visit in various ways, such as training in the sports field and classroom and other activities. During the one-week visit, a scholarship was awarded to a Form 5 student for further studies next year at Newington College. The group is led by Cameron Quince.
Newington offers scholarships to Tongan boys, and we currently have 5 scholarship recipients residing at Newington College, and they enrich our campus by teaching our boys what respect and hard work means.
Mr. Quinn also speaks of different assistance they've provided to Tupou College.
We bring books, we bring school furniture, we work with the boys in the classroom. So one of our teachers this year is an English teacher, another one's a science teacher. We've brought some science resources and we've shown Tupou staff how we use the science equipment, and our boys have been a part of those lessons.
Mr. Cameron also commended the Tupou College students for performance they did at their school day in Australia.
And our campus is still buzzing in terms of how impressed we were by the Tongan boys. They came out and played at our founders concert. They sang, the Tupou College choir, Tupou staff choir sang at some events as well, and everyone's still talking about it. They can't stop talking about how exciting it was to have everyone present for our anniversary.
The group departed Tonga today. Fundraiser also for Television Tonga News.
That's the local news. Sports is up next with Pierre Ollier.
In sport, Tonga's national sevens team this morning met Parliament's members before leaving Tonga to their tour to Australia next Monday. The 14 players were introduced to the MPs by the team's national coach and manager, Philokalafeka Ola, saying that these players were selected from the local clubs to represent the kingdom to the ILP's Gold Coast Sevens in the land down under. Speaking to Radio Tonga Sports News, Ofailoto Finao's captain says their plan is to bring home victory. The Gold Coast tournament is the beginning of the ILP tournament and international competition, where Tonga only competes in some of the events put in place for the upcoming tournament. Tupou College Tolo is in collaboration with the Newington College from Australia in sports field since 2010. This is according to the principal of the school, Fisi Hoimone, during a special program this morning to welcome the under-15 team from Newington to Tolo College. Meanwhile, 8 students have been fortunate from the scholarship from Newington College. However, a student, Islali Halaufia, is fortunate with a scholarship from Newington College, whom he will leave to study overseas next year.